Hey, what's going on, everyone, and welcome to episode 43 of the Alec Walt Show. I'm your host, Alec Walt, alongside another very special guest, and today we're talking about the NBA. We have news that a former All-Star wants to trade out of his current team and has told management for that team that he has no plans to wear an NBA uniform again until he is moved to a new team. Wild story, crazy development here in the NBA. Joining me to talk about this former All-Star and his future team and more is Kyle Russo, the co-host of Review and Preview Sports and Buckets on JDF Sports. Kyle, what's going on, man? Welcome back to Down the Block Sports.
What's up, Alec? Thank you for having me back on, man. I think this is my fifth time go around on the Alec Walt Show, but happy to be back.
No one has been on more shows than you.
I'm a popular person, I guess.
So it's an honor to have you back here on Down the Block Sports, talking some NBA basketball. So I talk about this player who wants out of his current team, has told management he doesn't plan to wear a jersey till he's traded. That former All-Star is Philadelphia 76ers point guard, point forward, Ben Simmons. Now, most of you know Ben Simmons because he had a horrendous postseason, a horrendous fourth quarter, and is not exactly a fan favorite within the city of Philadelphia. So, Kyle, getting this news yesterday from Woj is not a surprise to me at all.
No, it's not at all. Completely based on the fact that, like you said, Alec, all these things that happened in the playoffs, especially how things went down in the playoffs. They had multiple opportunities to close out the Atlanta Hawks. They couldn't do so. Ben Simmons was not playing great offensively whatsoever. And you compare to his teammate, Joel Embiid, who we remember suffered that knee injury and looked like he didn't even miss a step. And Ben Simmons essentially was the guy that was not showing up in primetime big moments. And then that missed dunk opportunity, Alec, right? That missed dunk opportunity right underneath the basket, because it was almost in a sense made out to be that he was afraid to go to the free throw line because he knew he was going to get fouled. And then we see the press conferences after Atlanta closes them out, and Doc Rivers essentially calls them out, and Joel Embiid essentially calls them out. And from that point forward to now, fast forwarding, 4 or 5 months, we all knew that there was no future for Ben Simmons in Philadelphia. It's one thing for fans to start calling you out, but when your coach and your teammate is doing so, I don't know how you could face that team once again for another season. I just don't get it. And then you see all the trade rumors go about since free agency started, and nothing was really transpiring and nothing was happening. And obviously so, trying to trade this guy with such a massive contract after the horrendous, like you alluded to, the horrendous playoff performance and the way he was being talked about by his teammates and coach. How can you potentially try to move this guy at all and potentially get any sum of value out of that? And now we sit here today in September. We're about a month away from the season starting. This news breaks. And like you said, Alec, no, it's not a surprise whatsoever. It really is not.
So with this comes, where's he going to go? And that's really where I want to focus the majority of this conversation. Now, Simmons is owed a ton of money. He signed that max contract a little bit ago. But Kyle, with his production recently, with his inability to develop a three-point shot, and, going into almost forcing himself out of Philadelphia with this large contract, what in the world can Philadelphia fans expect to get in return for Ben Simmons?
To be honest, I really don't know, Alec. I really don't know, because again,
it seems like every deal's a loss.
Well, listen, there's been some rumored trades, potential trade destinations. The Score actually came out with an article, a couple places that he could land. But in terms of the opposing team actually agreeing to that, I've seen some rumors around the Raptors, the Rockets, the Kings, and the Golden State Warriors. And you look and you break down these trades and you say to themselves, why would any of these teams want to do that? It seems like almost in a sense, the opposing team is the one losing them, not Philadelphia, because of where Ben Simmons has framed himself to be now in terms of value in this league, combined with the fact that, again, like you said, $177 million contract over the course of 5 years. I believe this is now the second year or third year of that contract. That breaks down to around $35 million a year. And based on his offensive ability and based on the fact that, year after year, it's been years now Ben Simmons has been in the league, and people are saying if he could just get a jump shot, if he could just, hit those free throws, if he could just develop a little more, he could be one of the greatest players in the league. And that stepping stone has really never happened. We've never seen that jump in his game. And granted, he's a great player. The reason why he's been an all-star, and what you alluded to in the intro, is because he's a phenomenal defensive player. But I'm sorry, you're not giving up these assets that we're seeing in these trade rumors. You're not giving up, you're not acquiring a $35 million per year player for a guy who cannot shoot the basketball. I'm sorry, that's just not going to happen. So based on all these rumors, in which I think that every opposing team would be losing the deal, and based on the money in which he's owed, I don't really think any deal is going to get done. I think there's going to be a potential sit down by Ben Simmons. I don't think he's going to play.
Yeah, I mean, let's look at some of these teams, because you mentioned the Golden State Warriors. I mean, there's no way in hell I'm accepting a deal that gets me Andrew Wiggins as the centerpiece of a trade.
See, I think we view it differently, right? You're viewing it from the perspective, at least from what I'm hearing, is that, the 76ers, you're making sure that you're not taking a loss on this guy. I'm looking at it from the opposing team's view, and I'm saying to myself, I'm looking at the trade breakdown because you brought up the Golden State Warriors. I'm not giving up Andrew Wiggins. I don't feel that, again, while Ben Simmons still has tremendous value, there's got to be some contract rule where Philadelphia's going to have to eat some money on that if I'm an opposing team that wants to take on that contract. Because really, the only team that I could really see doing it, and I'll hold off on this because I'll finish out my statement here. I'll hold off on telling which team I think doesn't make the most sense, but I think is the only team that in reality can do so without necessarily maybe taking a hit. I'll hold off on that. But Golden State, I don't get why you would give up Andrew Wiggins. Andrew Wiggins actually had a pretty great year. And if you're Golden State now entering this season with a second year of James Wiseman, you know what you have in Steph Curry, you know what you have in Draymond Green. Moses Moody looked great. Jonathan Kuminga looked great in the G League. And now you're getting Klay Thompson back, and this team is being evaluated as a potential number 1, number 2, or number 3 seed in the Western Conference. Why do you want to mess with that formula to add a guy who not only doesn't add anything offensively, again, a team that doesn't need offense, but why do you want to get rid of some of your key offensive pieces, some of your key big man pieces, to acquire a guy that you already know cannot shoot the basketball, cannot shoot from the free throw line, has proven now in a playoff situation that he's not great under pressure, and on top of the fact, not really that this has been a relevant story as of now, but in the early days of Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid butting heads with each other of whose team it is. And not that that would ever happen with Steph Curry on the franchise, but why do you want to add that to your roster and then take on $35 million a year? If I'm Golden State, I don't want to do that. I want to roll with what I got. I'm not a team that should be interested, to be quite honest with you. At least if I'm Golden State, I'm moving away from that, and I'm seeing what I got in my 2 top 14 rookies. I'm seeing what I got in another year of Andrew Wiggins. I'm seeing what I got out of Steph Curry, who should have won the MVP this year, in my personal opinion, based on what he did and what he accomplished. And then getting Klay Thompson back? Are you kidding me? Why do you want to mess with that formula?
See, this perfectly explains why I think this is such a difficult trade to make. Because you think if you're the team acquiring Simmons, you're losing. I think if you're the team getting what you can get in return for Simmons, you're losing. Because regardless of if you're Philadelphia, you're getting bad money, you're getting long-term money, and you're getting a player who may not be overall as talented as Ben Simmons. Yeah. And this is also a team where you're in the toughest division potentially in the NBA. You have a all-star player who is one of the best player, if not the best player in the league at his specific position. And he's now unlikely going to have a number 2 co-star next to him potentially for next season. This is a terrible situation for really whoever's involved. It is not going to be easy for Daryl Morey to find this team. So you keep mentioning a team. The floor is yours, man.
I think the only team, and even this team, now thinking about it, I wouldn't do it if I was them, but the only team in which could make some possible sort of sense is if you call up Houston, which now I'm realizing may cause even more problems, being that Daryl Morey now runs the Philadelphia 76ers, and they may not want to do a trade in doing so. Obviously, as we saw, Houston didn't want to trade James Harden to Philly. Remember that last year? So same kind of situation, but not 1v1. Obviously, some more pieces in the package, but a Ben Simmons for John Wall deal, as John Wall is also now not coming back to the Houston Rockets with his massive contract.
I think that would be a miserably horrible trade for the 76ers.
I don't disagree.
I think Philly would explode if they got John Wall as the centerpiece of return for Ben Simmons. I think that would be a terrible trade.
But but realistically, right? Look at it from a Philly fan perspective. At this point in time, what essentially would you be happy with for Ben Simmons? He's kind of devalued his own game. He's devalued his reputation in a sense, being that he has butted heads with guys in the locker room. He has been noted as a guy in the offseason that doesn't look to furthermore improve his game to that next level that everybody's been talking about for the past 5-6 years. And he's got a massive contract. Yeah, and he also has one of the worst contracts in the league. So what essentially, if you're a Philly fan, do you even say, are you happy with? If I'm a Philly fan, it's one of those things where you essentially, in my personal opinion, you just got to just say, okay, we just got to move on. We just got to move on because all these first round picks that people are predicting, all these, a lot of these deals are including some of these new rookie players that were just drafted this year. Why would you want to give up that kind of capital for this guy? Unless you're a team, and like I said, why, I wouldn't do it from Golden State. They're maybe one of the only few teams that could afford to do so because they're so loaded on offense. You wouldn't have to worry about Ben Simmons being involved there because you already got the true point guard. You already got the lights out shooters. You already got the greatest backcourt potentially of all time, if not already is. So you don't have to worry about what he participates offensively. And then furthermore, improving upon their defensive aspect, as we know, defense outside of Draymond Green is not really great on that squad. And we'll see what Klay Thompson can do now, not playing basketball essentially the last 2.5 years as he exited as one of the best two-way players in basketball as well. But if you're Philly, from their perspective as a fan, and I've talked to a lot of Philly fans. I go to school with a bunch of Philly fans. They're essentially on the bandwagon of they've given up essentially on Ben Simmons. They were riding the bandwagon saying this guy's going to improve. This guy's going to get there and he's going to be great. And the minute they gave him that contract, I knew for me personally, it wasn't going to end well because I'll never fathom how in the world in a game in which has become so offensively dominant, how can you pay a guy that much money when the stigma attached to him is that he has basically outside of driving the lane, no offensive play whatsoever, cannot shoot the three, cannot shoot free throws, and has no jump shot.
And struggles late in games.
If I'm Philly, basically, wrapping this all up in a sum is just that you're talking about you wouldn't do it because Philadelphia would be losing the trade. At this point, if I'm a Philly fan, I'm just trying to get what I could get, essentially.
You basically have to accept that you're going to lose.
Exactly.
And that's why it's such a tricky spot. It's like, because Morey, it's almost like a disservice to Embiid.
Yeah.
Because how many more years of this elite version of Embiid are we going to get? We're going to get plenty more.
Yeah.
But who is going to be playing around him in Philadelphia?
Yeah. That's the factor that is yet to be answered because we've seen they've tried, don't get me wrong, they've tried to adjust. They've kind of built this team. People talk about building this team around Joel Embiid. They've built this team to, in a sense, build around Embiid, but also hide Ben Simmons' flaws, right? They drafted a guy in Tyrese Maxey to be the shooter. They brought in a guy in Seth Curry who, career-wise, has never shot below 41 or 42% from the three-point line. A couple years back, they brought in J.J. Redick. That experiment didn't work either. And not that those two guys that I just mentioned before, and Tyrese Maxey and Seth Curry haven't worked, because they have. But even with all of that added, it's still not enough to hide the fact that Ben Simmons has become a liability when he's on the floor. We saw late in games, Alec. Doc Rivers had to take him out of the game. They were playing Hack a Simmons on him. He was losing them the basketball game. And how can you pay a guy that much? How can you say that's your number two when essentially he was the downfall of your team? That's why I think, people are saying, Doc Rivers released a statement today saying that we're trying to get Ben back, which essentially means what Ben Simmons is saying is a fact, right? It's not a rumored statement. You know how sometimes articles will be written and say that, oh, there's no shot Ben Simmons is coming back. But based on that answer by Doc Rivers, that's a factual statement coming out of Ben Simmons' mouth that he does not plan on playing for this team again. But how do you come back to that? I just don't get that is one of the messiest situations now in basketball. How do you come back to that essentially after essentially being ousted by your teammate, ousted by your coach, hated by the entire city of Philadelphia? There is no return. The reason why essentially I think you're trying to make nice at this point is because the reality is, like I said earlier, we're a month away from basketball and nobody's pulling the trigger. Listen, if it didn't happen on draft night, where all those picks were to be held by all these teams that are now looking to be involved in it, if those assets were not given up back in June, I'm sorry, they're not being given up now either. They're just not.
Yeah, I mean, why'd we wait this long?
Yeah.
Because for Philly, you're in that month where you're trying to market people. Come to Philly, come to 76ers games, watch 76ers games on TV, buy 76ers jerseys.
Yeah.
And you want to know what's attached to the Philadelphia 76ers name right now?
Yeah.
A star player the city doesn't like and is likely on his way out the door.
Yeah.
Timing sucks right now for the 76ers.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Yes, it does.
What do you think? So say they make a trade. Clearly, they don't get the Ben Simmons level return, and they have Joel Embiid and a bunch of 3s and 4s. Where does this team go?
I don't think they go anywhere.
I don't either.
I don't think they go anywhere. And the reason why I say that is because as great, and you saw it, as great as Embiid was, almost dropping 35 plus points a night, rebounding out of his mind, a defensive monster, Tobias Harris performing very well, Seth Curry performing very well, and the rest of the 76ers as well. The impact in which Ben Simmons had on the team alone brought them down so far that they literally were losing basketball games. Now we're asking, what does this mean for them going forward? We've seen the way basketball has shifted. It's hard enough to win when you got two superstars on the squad, let alone 3 in what we've been seeing around the league and people forming up, right? Miami adding Kyle Lowry to now essentially a big 3. Russ going to the Lakers to essentially form a big 3. Chicago's not going to be something to mess with. I'm telling you, that's going to be a team to look out for. Everybody's improving. Philadelphia, like you said, this is awful timing. It's hard enough to win with 2 stars, let alone 3. Now you're putting only 1 in Philadelphia, especially based on the fact that what Joel Embiid has done has been so great, but we know he's injury prone. And we know going hard that every night like that, that's going to be wear and tear on your body. And they want to keep this guy around long term. That's the future of this franchise. He's the number 1. That's solidified already. They need to find the number 2. The problem is that, again, if I'm the 76ers, I'm saying to myself, this should have been a deal done a long time ago. We should have never given this guy the max. As soon as Embiid started playing the way he was playing, and you saw that they were butting heads the way they were butting heads, you have to choose the guy that's actually performing. And again, I don't devalue defense. Defense is great. And he's one of the best defensive players in basketball. But I cannot feel comfortable giving a guy $35 million, hoping that after they give his contract to him a year ago, hoping that after 5 seasons of basketball, the 6th season was going to be the year that he turns his game around offensively on top of keep what he has defensively as an asset. It's going to be very, very difficult. And I truly believe that he will sit out and they will not be able to find a trade suitor for them. I really don't think they will, unless they just settle with anything at this point, unless it becomes such an icky situation that they just have to do it to just do it. I just don't see him being moved unless something like that was to happen.
Kyle, before we let you go, man, how can our listeners keep in touch with you on social media and listen to your podcasts?
So as Alec brought up earlier, as he introduced me, make sure to go follow me at Kyle Russo 612 on Instagram. I'm not really a Twitter fan. I run all my streams that I'm on a couple of shows, JDF Sports, Buckets. Every Wednesday we're returning, I believe, the first week in October for a show to kind of pre-look the beginning of the season, as it will start towards the end of October. That's happening, I believe, October 2nd, I want to say, will be our first return show. So make sure to tune into that. And then Review and Preview Sports actually just did a show last night, hosted the show over at Review and Preview Sports. Make sure you tune into that as well. I know I do a lot of basketball content when I'm on with Alec, but my variety of sports is vast, I would say. Know my football, know my basketball, know my baseball. So make sure to follow on Review and Preview Sports. Tune in. If you liked anything that I've said, make sure to check me out on all my other platforms as well. And Alec, again, kind words. We've had conversations on the side, but always a pleasure being on your show, man. Always a great time when I get that text message, that DM on my Facebook account and say, hey, man, you down to talk about this? Of course and always, man. Of course and always.
Awesome. I appreciate you joining me. I always love talking basketball right here. Like I've said before, no other guest has been on this channel more than Kyle Russo. I highly recommend you tune in with all things he's doing. This kid is the best when it comes to all things sports. I just love talking basketball with him right here on Down the Block Sports. What do you guys think of Ben Simmons? Where is he going? Where is he going to end up? Feel free to comment that below. Also, forget to like this video and subscribe to Down the Block Sports for more of my exclusive content. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and we will see you very soon.